Tales from the wild. Stories from the heart. A journey into the mind and soul of fired-up business professionals where they share their vision for the future. And hear from a different non-profit organization every month as they create awareness of their goals and their needs. Dive into a world of untamed passion as we join our host, Shireen Buerta, for this month's episode of Friends from Wild Places.
All right. Well, welcome. Shireen here. I am your virtual boutique bookkeeper and QuickBooks advisor. Are you a business owner doing your books by yourself or know of someone doing this? Are you tired of spending countless hours trying to manage your finances? Well, please say goodbye to the stress and hassle of bookkeeping by outsourcing to the experts. With a dedicated bookkeeper, you can save time and money while ensuring accuracy and compliance with all financial regulations. Trust us to handle all your financial needs so you can focus on growing your business. Don't wait. Make the smart choice today. Call Shireen's Bookkeeping Services and experience the difference. If you want to know more, go check me out at www.shireensbookkeeping.com and allow me to keep your books clean so you don't have to. Well, welcome back. You are listening to Friends from Wild Places with myself, Shireen, and my amazing co-host, Tanya. Wow, Tanya, are you ready for the weekend? Do you have any plans?
I am ready for the weekend. I am all about R&R these days. So just taking some respite and relaxing, recharging, refreshing. That's all I'm doing. So looking forward to it.
I love that. I love that. We also have some great news for you listeners that Tanya and I are coming up with some extra content, some bonus content for you guys. So if you go to friendsfromwildplaces.buzzsprout.com, that's friendsfromwildplaces.buzzsprout.com, you can go and subscribe for only $5 a month, and you can get some really cool, juicy, deep dive content that we don't post anywhere else. So we're excited about that, right, Tanya? We like something new. So
Yes.
we have some really, really good topics to talk about that we've really wanted to talk about for a long time. But because it's really raw and real, we might want to put a paywall around it so that people know that this is not for children, it's for adults. And it's real life situations that especially us women deal with, you know? And we're here to support each other as business owners and entrepreneurs. We're also here to support each other with the real issues that a lot of us have to come face to face with in our everyday lives. So we are super excited to introduce Gloria Cordoves. She's a real estate inspector and owner of Precise Home Inspection Services. Gloria is managing partner of Precise Home Inspection Services and has been providing top-notch inspections for residential and commercial properties for over 21 years. As a successful woman-owned business, Precise has built a reputation for excellence and trustworthiness in the industry. Her dedicated team of inspectors are committed to ensuring top quality inspections of properties, and their extensive experience is a testament to their unwavering dedication to their clients. Outside of work, Gloria cherishes her quality time with family. You often find her making any excuse to gather with loved ones and friends, sipping on some fine wine and cooking while listening to some nice music, enjoying and creating lasting memories. The beach, boating, and spending time is the majestic Blue Ridge Mountains has a special place in her heart, providing the perfect escapes to rejuvenate her spirit and reconnect. So welcome, Gloria. We are so happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, ladies. I greatly appreciate it and looking forward to this.
For sure.
Yes, I'm super excited, Gloria. I have so many questions. It's an area that I know very, very little about. And also just getting to know you personally and your story and Yeah, so why don't we start there, Gloria? Why don't you just share with us and our listeners about, who is Gloria Cordoves?
Nice.
Oh, well, thank you once again, ladies, for having me. This is kind of a worldwide podcast that you have going that I've been enjoying for quite some time. So for me, it's a privilege once again to be here and to be able to share my story with you, beautiful ladies. I am a native from South Florida. I'm born in Miami, Florida. I've been married for a few years now with my loved one. I have 3 children, adult children, and 2 grandchildren. My background initially, before I commenced into the business that we've been managing for the last 21 years, was in financial services. I was a banker by trade. My family, my mother, my brother were all bankers back in the day, so it was something that I just naturally fell into and I very much enjoyed. But as things started changing here in South Florida, and here in South Florida, we always have a particular autonomous way of doing business, right? We're the gateway to the Americas. And back in the, 90s, late 80s, there was a lot of, craziness here going on with the, Scarface sort of scenes and drug scenes and what have you. So banking got a little complicated. And I didn't want to be a part of, it was very difficult to know who my customers were, where they were coming from, et cetera. So I went ahead and started doing financial advisory as a broker, and I left banking. And after about 7 or 8 years, when 9/11 came around back in 2001, I had my clients' portfolios that were quite affected. Everybody's lives was affected by the tragedy to begin with. And it was something that really bothered me a lot because I had really, tried to advise my clients in a non-selfish way, customized to their real needs for their future, for their retirement, for their estate planning. And I was very frustrated when I saw that their portfolios had, almost disappeared to, more than 50%. So that's when, and I had been sick and tired of, I traveled quite a bit to Latin America and the Caribbean for work at that time. My clients were, high net worth individuals in those areas. And in the interim, I had children that I had to take care of, and I would always have to travel and not be around for all those milestones, or the first time they walked, or they said a word, etc. And I got pregnant simultaneously during that time with my son, who is exactly as old as Precise Home Inspection Services, the company, 21 years old. And I told my husband, listen, I don't want to do this anymore. I really want to finally do what we've always thought of doing since we were very young when we got married, and open up our own business. So that's basically how, kind of in a nutshell, Precise came to be. It was turn of the century in 2001, a very difficult time after 9/11, and a child, right? So I mean, it was a really cool reason to kind of transition and do a life change. And that's what we did. You were fortunate enough to open up the company. The reason why we opened up this company in particular for real estate inspections, as you mentioned earlier, Tanya, was because we had been successfully investing on a personal level in real estate and, buying and flipping homes. And we were good at it. My husband had a vision for that as well, and for fixing things up and what have you. So we kind of gravitated towards the inspection business because it wasn't something that was that much on the radar back then in 2003 when we opened up the company. And a family-run business became a woman-owned business when my eldest daughter became a partner, and she's been on board with us for 8 years, Ali, and we're very proud of how we have evolved. We're going into second generation now. So super excited about the future. And I'm super excited about seeing, a small business, being able to survive all the difficult, economic, great recessions and all the difficulties that they have to confront and still be standing, like Elton John says, so
Yes.
here I am.
I
That's
love that.
amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
I think that's amazing. And again, you are so welcome on the show. And we're going to get into the nitty-gritties soon to get to know more about you and the quote of the day, which is normally on the next step. But before we do, let's get a little bit more relaxed, have a little bit of an icebreaker. I don't know, Gloria, I'm sure you might know this already about myself and Tanya, but we are true crime fans. And so we love to follow all the true crime channels. And so we're going to just touch on one of the trials that's been ongoing, and it's actually recently closed, and that's the Rust movie shooting, which is quite crazy actually, to if you know what actually happened, and I'll get into that now. But yeah, Alec Baldwin manslaughter trial has just closed, and it was dismissed. So Alec is obviously very happy about that. But the basic details, and I won't get into too much of this, it was a typical recording day on the Rust movie set. And for somehow there ended up being a live ammunition loaded in one of the guns that they were using on the set. And this particular gun was passed over to Alec, and he was practicing his lines and whatever the case may be that you do before you 3, 2, 1 action. And I don't know how it went off. He claims that he never pulled the trigger. It went off, and it went straight through the cinematologist and hit the producer. Unfortunately, the cinematologist has passed away. I think it was either the producer or the director. He made it, he's fine. So 2 people were ultimately, well, 1 person was arrested. That was the armorer, Miss Reed. And then obviously Alec is also was up for manslaughter as well. Both of them were. And so the 2 cases ran consecutively. The first case was Miss Reed with her manslaughter case, and basically the 2 sides were they tried to make her, look like she was reckless, and granted, it should never have happened, and we'll get into that, but they made it out to be that she was reckless, she didn't check the guns, which is true. She obviously didn't check it properly, and that she was actually taking drugs on the sets, and what, and so on. Obviously, the opposite side was, trying to say that she had been asking for more people on deck to assist, and no one was listening to her. So there was 2 sides of the argument, as there always is. And then, so that, I think, is still underway. I've still got to hear about what happens to Miss Reed, but it was dismissed for Alec. But regardless, let's just chat about it, because I'm sure this is not the only time something like this has ever happened on a set, right?
It isn't.
What are your thoughts, Gloria?
It isn't. First of all, I think that as women, we have a tendency. My husband always says that he would always freak out because I would always watch all the crime documentaries and anything to do with crime. And he was saying, you're setting me up for, disappearing one day. And I'm like, no, I think it's women. Women, we love that. I don't know. It's just like part of our wiring in our head, so to speak, in our brain. So I'm also a big fan of those type of topics. But anyway, back to the Rust. Yeah, that tragic, right? Super tragic. There's always 3 sides to a story. The prosecutor, defense, and in reality, what really happened, right? Which we most of the time, sometimes we would never really know what really happened.
Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned going back. If this happened before, back in 1993, actually a famous martial artist and actor, Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee, was killed by a dummy bullet as well on set. The movie's name is The Crow. It's kind of has a cult following. And the actor that that did shoot the gun off had no clue that there was anything on it. And back then, that was many years ago, obviously back then, like, nothing really happened to them, meaning the sense Brandon died. He was 28 years old. So Bruce Lee died young. His son, was an actor and died. He's also a martial artist, died young as well. So there definitely it's happened, before. Unfortunately, I don't know the extent of how much the investigation went back then. But regarding Rust, it's very sad. The family has lost a mom, a wife, a daughter. And it happened so tragically. That was just suddenly, and they were right there. There was no way that they could save her. It was something that was instant. What's going to happen? Alec got off, obviously, you know, with off the manslaughter. He's a producer, I believe, of the Rust movie. So he was held responsible. You know, you're responsible if you're the CEO of any company, right? So, and on top of the fact that he did have, you know, he did supposedly something happened, whether he pulled the trigger or not, but somebody did something, you know,
Right. Yeah.
somehow, some way it got out. Regarding Miss Reed's situation, I feel bad as a young person, you know, in a business that is very specialized, right? And she had the opportunity to be working on these type of sets with these type of big names in the industry. Perhaps her crew, her team, you know, didn't do the right thing, due diligence. Obviously, somebody messed up. But usually when you have big fish and little fish, the little fish always end up, you know, getting, you know,
Exactly.
harder penalties and harder punishment. And that's about all I can say at this point from what I've seen. I personally find it difficult to not believe that's the trigger wasn't pulled, but that's, you know, I'm not the jury, right?
Right. Right. Tanya, what do you think?
So this, you know, it's funny, as much as I like watching these, you know, kind of investigative, you know, crime stories, this one, I did all my best to stay focused on it. For some reason, it was hard to get into. It was just like, it did not captivate me. And I don't know, like I had to watch it, like rewatch it like 2 and 3 times, which is kind of out of character for me. So I finally got to the part where he was, you know, they actually found him guilty and he was prosecuted. My question is, so what has happened that he's been kind of released? Was it an appeal? Like, I don't even understand, like, I couldn't even follow what happened.
As far as I know, Alec his case for manslaughter was dismissed.
Yeah, so the family's appealing now. Obviously, the cinematographer, I think her name was, you know, it's funny, you look kind of, you know, Shireen, you know, your built and your, you know, color and everything else reminds me a little bit of her. And looking at you, but anyway, I understand that the family is going after. They're going to appeal it, obviously, like anybody else can. But I think that Alec, like what you saw recently, that was the actual trial. And it was dismissed. Now, why it was dismissed, honestly, I don't know the intricacies of it. I don't know. I have no idea if it was something that, you know, was circumstantial evidence. I have no idea what happened. Something, you know, something technical that many times happens. I don't know.
Yeah,
I wish I did.
it's a tough one. It's a tough one because, and I tell you, for me, we're living in 2020. You know, we should be having like strict standard processes that every gun needs to go through. And that's what they were saying in the trial. You know, there are actually things that tests that have to be done that weren't done when the gun eventually got to Alec's hands. So like, there's a lot of things that would just slip through the cracks. And for that, I think whoever should be held responsible for simply for not sticking to the procedures that are put in place for safety reasons and should be abided by because of that. Anything above that, like, you know, the power thing, you know, he's got big power, big money. I don't know if that's come into play a little bit here with the reason why it was dismissed. But I'm glad the family needs to come to peace with this at the end of the day. And, you know, if they want to appeal it, then they need to do what they need to do, you know?
So just so I'm clear, because I was watching it, I mean, pretty intently. So he was actually not found guilty, like right out the gate. Is that correct? Because initially it was kind of headed that he was going to be found, and then it just like all of a sudden it was dismissed. So is that what happened? And now they're appealing it. The
Correct.
family, the victim.
Correct.
Okay.
It just what we recently just saw was his trial,
Yeah.
and in the end, it was dismissed. And yeah, it looked like he was going to be found with something, right? Because it was one of those where it was leading up to it. And then all of a sudden, which I guess behind the scenes, you know, something came up that they were able to tag on and be able to dismiss it. So that I think, like you said, Tanya, it hasn't been too clear, right? Or too described well to the public per se. But it's a little frustrating, right? So, you know, back to like, we're talking about businesses, you know, a movie set is a business, right? I mean, there's a budget and everything else. So, protocols have to be followed. Obviously, they weren't followed. But then you start thinking, as a business owner, right? I'm thinking, well, did they cut corners? Were they paying very little for this particular part? There's so many components to doing a movie that we can't even imagine. That's why we have so many, those credits are like gazillions of people, because even the smallest minute detail has to be taken into account. So it's a big production, right? But something happened, and the only thing that I can, that I'm hoping and praying for the sake of the families, that have been affected, like I mentioned many, many moons ago, this other, the Lee family, that something is done once and for all. Like we're always talking about this, right? That protocols are really, taken into account, and that this particular part of any moving forward movie, or they're acting, with quote unquote blanks, that is the protocol is much stricter, and that they put more money into making sure that they have more experienced people or the proper crew, etc. So I'm sure that this is going to be, negative things that happen to others are always something positive that comes out of it, the silver lining. So I'm hoping that moving forward, that's at least something that's going to happen.
100%. And I think what attracted me to the whole thing is I'm from the aviation industry. Safety is a very big thing on board the aircraft, and we go through extensive training to avoid any sort of accident or incident on board, what to do if it happens, and then afterwards. And so it is hectic for us, and granted, we're not talking about on board a plane with hundreds of people. We're talking about a movie set. So it's a different circumstance, but either way, you're dealing with safety. Safety is a big concern when you're going to be dealing with different weapons and dangerous weapons and stunts that could possibly hurt people. You've got to have these protocols in place, like you say, Gloria. So anyway, it's interesting, and I'll continue watching. Not one of the best I've followed. I've got to agree with Tanya. Not one of the best, but nevertheless, I'm interested to see what happens.
Yes, well, certainly it's a delicate matter, and that's going to go on for a while. I'm sure we're going to hear more about it.
Right.
Of course. So Gloria, I have some, when you were sharing, just as far as, your little bit about yourself. So I don't know too many native Floridians. So you are a native Miami-born girl, huh? Like, that's amazing. Like,
I am one of the original 305s that Mr. Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide talks about. That's the original area code for Miami. I know, Tanya, you're not originally from Florida, so 305 is the original area code. We see a whole bunch of others now, but because we've gotten so big here. But I am a native. I am a native Floridian, native Miami, and so is my husband. So it's kind of cool. And I've lived out of here for a few months up in New England, but very short stint up there. But most of my life obviously has been here, and my business has been here, and my life and my family and my friends. So it's pretty cool. Miami has evolved into a ginormous, beautiful city.
Tune in next week for part 2 from Friends from Wild Places.
You've been listening to Friends from Wild Places with Shireen Bueta. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast from the links to catch every episode and unleash your passion.